Hello guys, so now we shall be discussing another important concept on hypothalamus. Okay, so we shall discuss what are the structures of hypothalamus, what are the borders of the hypothalamus which we have. So if you have already watched my previous lectures on the medial aspect of, now I will be drawing the medial aspect of the cerebral hemisphere. So if you have already watched that picture of medial aspect of cerebral hemisphere, you can fast forward the video because that is the same picture I am going to draw. And if this is your first video that if you are watching, then I want you to watch the complete video to understand the medial aspect of the cerebral hemisphere. Okay, because that is a place where we have got thalamus as well as the hypothalamus. Now, so our topic of discussion would be regarding the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus. So let us see what are the structures that are located within the hypothalamus. Now before to discuss those structures, first of all you have to know which side of the picture you have to draw. Let us say these are your cerebral hemispheres. You see, this is your right cerebral hemisphere, this is your left cerebral hemisphere. Okay, now both the cerebral hemispheres are joined together, okay, with the help of fibers called as corpus callosum. Now in these two cerebral hemispheres, this surface which you can see is called as a supralateral surface. This is also called as a supralateral surface. Now for example, if I am dividing both the cerebral hemispheres like this surface which you can see is called as a medial surface, and this medial surface is having this projection. You see, this projection is called as your corpus callosum. Okay, so now what I will be drawing is that I will be showing you the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere, and we will discuss what are the structures that are located here. Okay, so let us discuss about the medial surface of your cerebral hemisphere. Now in the medial surface of a cerebral hemisphere, let us say so this would be just a rough picture of the medial surface of your cerebral hemisphere. Now in this picture over here, if you can see very carefully, this structure which I am drawing right now like this, right? So this structure over here is called as your corpus callosum. Okay, what is this structure called as? This structure over here is called as your corpus callosum. Now in this corpus callosum, there are two important parts. Okay, you see this part, this red color part which I am drawing right now, this is called as, what is this called as? This is called as the genu of corpus callosum. Okay, GENU. Okay, I'll write down these names. Next important thing is, if you can see this part over here, this green one, this is called as the splenium of corpus callosum. Now between the genu and splenium, this structure which I am drawing right now, this is called as the body or the trunk of the corpus callosum. Okay, so let me write down these structures one by one over here. So this structure over here is called as a genu, GENU of corpus callosum. Next, this structure over here is called as a body or the trunk of corpus callosum. And finally, this structure over here is called as a splenium of corpus callosum. This is called as your splenium. Okay, now here there is one more structure. If you can closely observe over here, here we have got one more structure in this way. You see this structure? So this structure which I am drawing right now is called as a fornix. Okay, so what is this structure over here? This structure over here is called as your fornix. This structure over here is called as a fornix. Now in between the fornix and in between the corpus callosum, you have got another important structure over here. Now all of you just look here. You see these green color lines which I am drawing right now. So these green color lines will indicate a specific septum. This is called as septum pellucidum. You see these green color lines over here is nothing but called as your septum pellucidum. Okay, so what is septum pellucidum? You see this green color thing over here is called as your septum pellucidum. Septum pellucidum. Okay, for example, if I have to show you where is septum pellucidum, first of all I have to draw the corpus callosum. Let us say this part over here which I have drawn right now. Okay, so let me rub it out and then draw it clearly. Yeah, for example, let us say this part which I have drawn right now, this part over here is called as your corpus callosum. Okay, so this part over here is called as your corpus callosum like this. Okay, Now, within this corpus callosum, what did I tell you? Let us say if this is your corpus callosum like this, right? Within this corpus callosum, what did I tell you? I told you that you have got the part which is green in color called as septum pellucidum. Now, by looking at this picture from the side, what you might think? You might think that if this is corpus callosum like this, if you are looking corpus callosum from the front side, okay, you might think septum pellucidum is all over like this, right? But actually no, septum pellucidum is not all over the corpus callosum. Exactly, septum pellucidum is located in the center. So, if I draw this picture, you will understand. So, just look at this now. This particular part over here, you see, this particular part over here is your septum pellucidum. Okay, see, this particular part over here is called as your septum pellucidum. You see, this is your septum pellucidum. Okay, now beneath the septum pellucidum, here you have got what is called as a fornix. Okay, septum pellucidum and septum pellucidum ke niche what is the thing? That is a fornix. Okay, now you see here, is the septum pellucidum attached here? Attached here? No, the septum pellucidum is attached exactly in the center. So, if you are looking from the side view like this, from the side view, how does it look? It looks in this way. Okay, just below the corpus callosum, we have got septum pellucidum, and just beneath the septum pellucidum, we have got what? This is called as a fornix. Okay, now after that, if you see this red color thing which I have drawn, which is also called as a genu, right? Just beneath that, we have got one more structure in this way. Okay, so this structure over here is called as, which I have drawn in blue color, this is called as rostrum. This structure over here is called as the rostrum. What is this structure called? This structure is called as the rostrum. Now, just beneath the rostrum, we have got one more structure in the form of a ball like this. This structure over here is called as an anterior commissure. I will explain you very clearly what is anterior commissure, what is posterior commissure, what is habenular commissure and all. So, that I will draw in another picture. Okay, so there I will explain you. But right now what you need to know is that this particular structure over here which I have drawn is called as your anterior commissure. Anterior commissure. Okay, now just beneath this anterior commissure, you see this long part which is hanging down. This part which is hanging down all the way down like this. This part over here is called as your what? This part over here is called as your terminalis. What is this terminalis? This is in the form of a straight line. So, this is called as linea terminalis. Okay. So, this structure over here is called as your linea terminalis. Linea terminalis. Linea terminalis. Okay. This is called as your linea terminalis. And by the way, you have to remember one very important part. By the way, you have to remember one very important thing over here, that first of all in this picture, which is the frontal side, which is the occipital side. All of you know this is frontal, back is occipital. But in this picture, where is the frontal? See, this pole is called as a frontal pole. Okay. Whereas this pole over here is called as a temporal pole. Okay. And this pole over here is called as your occipital pole. So, how many poles we can see in this picture? 3. Frontal pole. Beneath that we can see temporal pole, and behind that we can see the occipital pole. Now, so this is your linea terminalis we discussed over here, right? Now, beneath this linea terminalis, for example, if I rub out this part over here like this, beneath this linea terminalis, we have got one more interesting structure. So, this is a structure that is located beneath the linea terminalis. Now, what is the name of this particular structure which I have drawn over here? This is what is called as your optic chiasma. Okay, so this structure which I am shading right now is called as your optic chiasma. Okay, now behind the optic chiasma, see, let me show these things in another picture. Anyways, I will draw that picture again, right? But still, I will show you the picture which I have already drawn in my previous classes. Okay, so let us see this thing. Right now, in this what you can see, first important thing which you can very clearly see over here is this particular part which you can see, right? So, what is this particular part over here? This is called as your optic chiasm. Behind the optic chiasm, what is this green color one over here? This is called as tuber cinereum. Just remember these things. Optic chiasm, behind optic chiasm what do we have? Tuber cinereum. Behind tuber cinereum what do we have? We have got two mammillary bodies. Behind two mammillary bodies what do we have? This is called as what? Posterior perforated substance. And behind that what do we have? We have got midbrain. So I just want you to remember these things, because these things again we will draw right now. This is the inferior surface. If this is a brain, right, this is a brain. If you are looking at the brain from below, okay, from the inferior end or from the basal end, this is of the picture looks. Okay, once again, so this is the optic chiasm. Behind optic chiasm we have got tuber cinereum. Behind that we have got mammillary bodies. Behind that we have got posterior perforated substance, and behind that we have got what? This is called as a midbrain. Okay, now let us go back to the same picture over here. So this is your optic chiasm. Behind optic chiasm what you should have? You should have what? Tuber cinereum, I told you. See, behind optic chiasm I have got tuber cinereum like this. Okay, now from this tuber cinereum you see a stalk like projection that is coming down, hanging down all the way. This stalk like projection is called as pituitary stalk, or you can also call it as infundibulum. Okay, so first of all let me write down these things. This one over here is called as your optic chiasma. Behind optic chiasma what is this? This is called as tuber cinereum. Behind this what do we have? This is called as pituitary stalk. Pituitary stalk, we can also call this pituitary stalk as infundibulum. Okay, now this pituitary stalk, what will happen is that this will continue as a pituitary gland like this. So this particular pituitary gland which I have drawn here is called as posterior pituitary. Okay, now this blue color thing which I am drawing right now is called as your anterior pituitary. Okay, so the red one is called as posterior pituitary, blue one is called as anterior pituitary. Anyways, when I discuss about the pituitary gland in detail, there we will discuss. Okay, but for now what you need to know, that this is a pituitary gland. Okay, so this particular part over here is your pituitary gland. This particular part over here will be your pituitary gland. Okay, in that picture from the inferior surface what did we discuss? First we discussed that there should be optic chiasm. Behind that optic chiasm we discussed about tuber cinereum. Behind the tuber cinereum we discussed that there are mammillary bodies, right? So how many mammillary bodies we have seen there? Two. That is from the inferior way. But from the side, see, these are two mammillary bodies, right? If I am looking from below, just imagine, if I am looking from below, I can see two mammillary bodies. But if I am looking from side in this way like this, now I can see only one mammillary body, that is this finger, right? I can only look at one mammillary body. If I am looking from the left, then also I can look at only one mammillary body, right? If I am looking from the top, then I can see two. If I am looking from the front, I can see two. If I am looking from below, I can see two. But from the sides, you can see only one mammillary body. So this is a side picture, yes or no, medial surface. So from here, how many mammillary bodies you can visualize? You can see only one like this. So this particular thing over here is what is called as your mammillary body. So this is your mammillary body. Now behind this mammillary body also, you have got an other important structure all the way like this. Okay, so you see this, and there are perforations in this substance, right? So behind the mammillary bodies, what did we discuss? Posterior perforated substance. So this one should be called as then posterior perforated substance. Yes. So this structure which I have drawn here, this is called as posterior perforated substance. This is called as posterior perforated substance. Behind the posterior perforated substance, what did we see there? We have seen that there is midbrain over there, right? So behind this posterior perforated substance, now what should I draw over here? That I have to draw your midbrain. Okay, so behind this, exactly here, you have got your midbrain. This is your midbrain, right? Now, let me do a little bit of shading within this midbrain, because I just wanted to show you one very important thing over here. So, this midbrain is actually having a small cavity within this. Can anyone guess what might be the cavity that might be present within this midbrain? This cavity which is present in the midbrain is called as, yes, that is some duct. What is that duct? That is called as cerebral aqueduct. For example, if I make a gap over here, you see this gap? This gap over here is called as your cerebral aqueduct. Okay, this gap over here which you can see is called as cerebral aqueduct. You see this? This gap over here which you can see is called as your cerebral aqueduct. This is your cerebral aqueduct. Now, cerebral aqueduct divided the midbrain into two parts. One is on the upper part, one is on the lower part, right? So, this part of the midbrain, this entire part of the midbrain which is above the cerebral aqueduct, let me write it down. This is called as cerebral. This is called as cerebral aqueduct. Above the cerebral aqueduct, whatever structure you can see over here, this is called as tegmentum. Tegmentum of the midbrain. Tegmentum of the midbrain. Whatever structure you can see above the cerebral aqueduct is called as tegmentum of the midbrain. Next important thing, you see this particular structure over here, you see this, which I am highlighting with the pink, right? So, this structure over here is called as subthalamic tegmentum of the midbrain. Why it is called subthalamic, I will tell you in a minute, okay? But for now, just remember it as, so this part which I will be writing over here is called as subthalamic tegmentum of the midbrain. Subthalamic tegmentum of the midbrain. So, this particular part over here is a subthalamic tegmentum of your midbrain, okay? So, one is called as a tegmentum of your midbrain and next one is called as a subthalamic tegmentum of your midbrain. Now, exactly here, one more important thing over here I have to tell you is that on the back, on the posterior aspect, here you have got a structure like this. This structure is nothing but called as your pineal gland. What is this structure called as? This structure is called as pineal gland. Pineal gland is also given an other name. What is that name? This is also called as epiphysis, okay? So, this structure over here is called as your pineal gland or epiphysis. Pineal gland, or you can also call it as epiphysis, pineal gland or epiphysis. Now, from this pineal gland or epiphysis, you see a stalk that is coming forward like this. Now, this stalk which is coming forward is called as pineal stalk. For example, pituitary gland has got a stalk called as pituitary stalk. Then pineal gland is also having a stalk, and this stalk over here is called as pineal stalk. Pineal stalk. This is called as your pineal stalk. Now, this pineal stalk, this particular pineal stalk divides into two particular things. See here, this pineal stalk is dividing into, one is called as superior laminae, another one is called as inferior laminae. There are two laminae over here, one on the top which is called as superior laminae, one on the bottom which is called as inferior laminae. Now, this inferior laminae is coming all the way like this and it is attaching over here. Then what about the superior laminae? See here, the superior laminae first goes anteriorly forward, uske baad it will go posteriorly backward, again it is coming anteriorly forward and then it is going on attaching in this way, okay? You see this? First it came anteriorly forward, then went posteriorly backward, again came anteriorly forward and attached there. So, this is what this is called as superior laminae. Now, for the superior laminae and for the inferior laminae, we have got two important structures. What are those two important structures? For example, this superior laminae is having a black color thing over here. This is called as habenular commissure. Okay, actually what is habenular commissure I will tell you. See, for example, here you have got a nuclei. Here you have got another nuclei. Now what I am doing is that I am connecting both the nuclei like this. Okay, So this nuclei over here is called as habenular nuclei. Habenular nuclei. And this one is also called as a habenular nuclei. Now the connection in between these two nuclei is called as habenular commissure. Habenular commissure. So from the side, again the same thing. This is habenular nuclei, this is habenular nuclei. Now connecting both of them, this white color thing whatever is there, this the band in between both of them is called as habenular commissure. Again, from the bottom you can see both the nuclei and the commissure. From the top also you can see, from the anterior side also you can see, but from the side what you can see only habenular nuclei. Yes or no? Or maybe partially you can see habenular commissure also. So that is the picture which I have drawn over here. Okay. So this particular thing over here is called as your habenular commissure. Habenular commissure. Now there is one more commissure down all the way here. See, this commissure over here is called as what? Posterior commissure. See here, if you remember that we discussed here, we have got anterior commissure, right? So this one will become your posterior commissure. So this one over here will become your posterior commissure. So one we have got is your habenular commissure and the second one we have got is a posterior commissure. Now another important thing over here is that you can see a triangular shaped area over here. You see this triangular shaped area like this, right? Where is this triangular shaped area located? This triangular shaped area is located exactly inside what? Between the two laminae. This is your superior laminae, this is your inferior laminae. Now in between the two laminae, this triangular shaped area whatever is there, this is called as pineal recess. What is this structure called as? This structure is called as pineal recess. Okay. Now you can also see another recess above the pineal recess like this. You see this recess which is located above the pineal recess. So what is this recess which is located above the pineal recess? Anything above is called suprapineal. So this is called as suprapineal recess. So one we have got is the suprapineal recess, another one we have got is a pineal recess, right? Now if you very carefully observe over here, in this particular part you can see a cavity like this. You see this cavity? This cavity whatever you can see here which is having a roof. See here, this particular thing is called as a roof, this is called as a floor, this is called as a posterior wall because it is on the back, and this is called as an anterior wall, right? So this particular cavity is called as the cavity of third ventricle or cavity of diencephalon. Okay, so this particular cavity is called as cavity of third ventricle or cavity of diencephalon. Okay, now this cavity of third ventricle or diencephalon, basically it is divided into two compartments like this. Two compartments with the help of a sulcus. This green color line which I have drawn is called as a sulcus. Now, okay, let me write it as 3 over here. 3 which means the third ventricle. Okay, 3V which means the third ventricle. Now, this third ventricle or cavity of diencephalon is divided into two portions with the help of this line over here, right? So, this line over here is called as hypothalamic sulcus. Okay, what is this sulcus called as? Particular sulcus is called as hypothalamic sulcus. This particular sulcus over here is called as hypothalamic sulcus. What is actually hypothalamic sulcus doing? Hypothalamic sulcus is dividing this entire third ventricle into two parts. So the upper part means above the sulcus. Above the sulcus, this is called as thalamus. Below the sulcus, this part is called as hypothalamus. This is called as hypothalamus. So above the sulcus backward, above posteriorly you have got thalamus, below anteriorly you have got hypothalamus. So these are the two important structures. So our topic of today's discussion would be what? Would be regarding this hypothalamus, because in the previous classes we have already discussed about the thalamus. So now we shall be discussing about the hypothalamus. So these are some of the structures which you really need to know. Okay. Now regarding this hypothalamus, first important thing I would like to mention here is that first of all, if you very clearly, I will write down one word over here. I will write down one statement and then I will explain you what is it. First of all, I wanted to discuss the antero-inferior part of lateral wall of third ventricle. Antero-inferior part of the lateral wall of third ventricle. What do I mean by this? Antero-inferior. First of all, tell me, in this entire picture, where is anterior? The place where you have got the frontal pole, right? So this frontal pole region is called as anterior. So now here tell me, in this hypothalamus, where is the anterior? Obviously this part will be anterior, right? This part will be posterior. Yes or no? So antero-inferior. So if this is hypothalamus, antero-inferior, this is anterior, right? This is inferior. Antero-inferior in the sense, if I draw a line like this, so this line in the center, this line in the center is called as antero-inferior part. Okay. So antero-inferior part of the lateral wall of the third ventricle. Now this picture, whatever you are seeing, in this entire structure, whatever I am highlighting right now, this entire structure, right, where I am putting cross marks, right. So this wall where I am putting cross marks is called as the lateral wall of the hypothalamus, right. This lateral wall of the hypothalamus, whatever you can see right now, you see, can you visualize this hypothalamus? Now whatever this triangular portion you can see here, this is called as the lateral wall of hypothalamus. This lateral wall of hypothalamus is also given another name called as hypothalamus of physiologist. Okay. This lateral wall is so thin that it is as thin as your nail. Okay, you know, finger ka jo nail hota hai na, it is very thin, right? So this lateral wall of the hypothalamus is also that thin. Okay, so what you need to write here, antero-inferior part of the lateral wall of third ventricle is called as what? Is called as hypothalamus of physiologist. Hypothalamus of physiologist is very, so this wall is very thin like a fingernail. Okay. So this is just a point which you need to remember. Let us say this is like a fact based point, whatever it is, which you need to remember. Now let us look at the walls. Let us look at the each and every wall and we shall discuss right now. The first important thing we shall discuss is that we shall discuss about the anterior part of the floor of the third ventricle. Okay. So we shall discuss about the anterior part of floor of the third ventricle. So now what do you mean by anterior part of the floor of the third ventricle? First of all, where is third ventricle here? See, this entire cavity is third ventricle. Floor of the third ventricle. Floor of the third ventricle in the sense, you see, this entire part here is called as a floor. This entire part is called as a floor of the third ventricle. Now in this floor of the third ventricle also anterior part in the sense, see, this particular part is called as the anterior, and behind the sulcus, this particular small part, whatever you can see, is the posterior part. Okay. For example, actually I have to make a little correction in this picture. I cannot draw it exactly dividing into two boxes over here. Instead I will draw like this, like this. Okay. So upper one is thalamus, lower one is hypothalamus. So now look here, this is the floor. This entire floor is shaded by two important things. From here till here, this is the anterior part, and behind the sulcus you see this small part, this is called as the posterior part. This anterior part is taken up by the hypothalamus and this posterior part is taken up by the thalamus. Okay. So here he is asking, what are the structures that are present in the anterior-inferior part of the floor of the third ventricle? So floor of the third ventricle is this. In that he want the structures that are located at the anterior part. Anterior means this one. So it means he is asking exactly the structures that are located over here. Okay. So now you tell me what are the structures that are located over here. First, can I tell that optic chiasm is there? That is located below the anterior part of the floor of the third ventricle. Next, can I tell the tuber cinereum is there? Third, can I tell the infundibulum is also there? Fourth, can I tell the mammillary bodies are there? Fifth, can I tell the posterior perforated substance is there? Right? Posterior perforated substance is there, right? So these are the structures. Now, if I exactly divide this line like this, you see this part, what is this part called as? Subthalamic tegmentum of the midbrain. Now, will this subthalamic tegmentum of the midbrain come under the anterior part or the posterior part? Obviously, you see it is exactly vertical in the posterior part, not in the anterior part. Okay, so what are the structures that are present only in the anterior part of the floor of the third ventricle? Or other way you can tell is that what are the structures that are forming the floor of hypothalamus? Where is hypothalamus? Anterior part of the floor of the third ventricle. Okay, so optic chiasm, tuber cinereum, mammillary bodies, posterior perforated substance, and then infundibulum and pituitary gland. So these are the structures that are asked over here. So let us write down one by one over here. So what are the structures that are located over here? The first important structure will be, you have got here optic chiasma. Optic chiasma. After this optic chiasma, the second important thing you have got is, behind the optic chiasma you have got tuber cinereum. Tuber cinereum. Third important thing whatever you have got is your infundibulum. Hanging from the tuber cinereum, you have got infundibulum. Now after this hanging to the infundibulum, what do you have? You have got your pituitary gland. Pituitary gland. And the fifth important thing, behind the pituitary gland, what do you have got? You have got your mammillary bodies. And sixth important thing you have got is a posterior perforated substance. Posterior perforated substance. So these are the structures that are forming the anterior part of the floor of the third ventricle. And by the way, regarding this pituitary gland and all, one very important thing you have to know, that as I told you, this is called as your tuber cinereum. Okay, here also you have got your tuber cinereum, and just beneath the tuber cinereum here, right, you see an infundibulum that is coming down. Right, attached to the infundibulum here, the structure which you have got here is called as your posterior pituitary, and this structure which I am drawing it with the pink is called as your anterior pituitary. Okay, so once again let me write it down. So this one over here is called as your posterior pituitary gland. Posterior pituitary. You know what is the other name for posterior pituitary? This is also called as neurohypophysis. Neurohypophysis. Next, this part over here is called as your anterior pituitary. So anterior pituitary is also called as adenohypophysis. Adenohypophysis. Okay, so you have got two important things. One is called as a posterior pituitary over here. Posterior pituitary over here. We have got anterior pituitary over here. So posterior pituitary is called as a neurohypophysis, anterior pituitary is called as a adenohypophysis. So this is one of the important thing you need to remember over here, right? Next. So we have done with the anterior part, right? So we have just now discussed about this one. We have discussed about the anterior part of the floor of the third ventricle. Now we will discuss the posterior part of the floor of the third ventricle. So what are the structures that are located in the posterior part of the floor of the third ventricle, posterior part of the floor of the third ventricle. Now you will tell me, looking at this picture, posterior part, which is the posterior part? See, this part over here is called as a posterior part. So if you look here exactly down, what do we have? We have got this subthalamic tegmentum of the midbrain. So posterior part of the floor of the third ventricle is having only one structure, and that is what is called as your subthalamic tegmental region of your midbrain. Subthalamic tegmental region of your midbrain. So this is a structure which we have in the posterior part of the floor of the third ventricle. Right. Now if you look here, one very important thing I want to discuss here is that optic chiasm. Optic chiasm is a part of which system? Optic chiasm is a part of visual pathway, right? And I am also telling you that optic chiasm is also a part of the hypothalamus, because optic chiasm is forming the floor of the hypothalamus, right? So you need to note down that optic chiasm is not only the part of the visual pathway, but it is also the part of hypothalamus. So this is one very important thing. Okay, so you need to know that optic chiasma is part of both visual pathway as well as hypothalamus. How hypothalamus? What is it doing? What contribution is this optic chiasma giving in the hypothalamus? It is forming the floor of the third ventricle, or floor of the hypothalamus, right? Or floor of the anterior part of the floor of the third ventricle, right? So this is an important statement. Second important thing is that I have been telling you that this optic nerves, in the previous lectures I have told you enough, that optic nerves, both of them, they cross each other. This is called dissociation. They undergo partial dissociation, and then the point where they are dissociating partially, when there are dissociation means crossing. When the both optic nerves cross together, the center point where they are crossing is called as optic chiasma, and this kind of dissociation or crossing is called as partial dissociation. Now what does it mean by partial dissociation? Okay, and also not only that, not only why it is called as partial dissociation, I will also explain you actually what is optic nerve. Is it really a nerve? No, optic nerve is not a nerve. It is actually the extensions of the forebrain, extensions of the white matter. Okay, you know, we have got gray matter and white matter. White matter extension is called as optic nerve. It is not a real nerve. Okay, but anyways, I will discuss that right now, that point here. For example, if you see, this is your eyeball. This is your eyeball. Okay, let us say this is your eyeball, and let us also say that this is your right eyeball. Okay, so here you have got your, let us say this is your right eyeball, this is your left eyeball. Okay, now to this eyeball, if you very clearly look here, this red color thing which I have drawn is called as the retina. Okay, here also this red color thing which I have drawn over here is called as your retina. Next, this green color thing which I have drawn over here is also called as retina. Is also called as retina. And where is your nose present? This is the nose. Now, this red color thing is called as retina, but this retina is located on the lateral side, so can I call it as lateral retina, right? So this particular thing over here should be called as lateral part of the retina, lateral retina. Next, this green color thing, this green color retina which is towards the nose is called as nasal retina, or you can also call it as medial retina. Medial retina, because they are facing the midline, or you can also call it as nasal retina. Now what will happen from the retina? What things come out from the retina? The optic nerve comes out. Okay, the fibers come out. For example, let me right. Now, first of all, let me write down the structures over here, then I will tell you what are the things. So this one over here is called as your optic nerve. Okay, so one on the right, one on the left, right optic nerve, left optic nerve. And this part over here, the center point, I will draw it later on, that is called as optic chiasma, and this is called as optic tract. So how many optic tracts you have got? Right and left. And next important thing is that this area which I am shading right now, this yellow color region which I am shading right now, is called as your geniculate body. So this area which I have shaded right now is called as your geniculate body. So this is your lateral geniculate body on the right and on the left, and you have got medial geniculate bodies on the right as well as on the left. So let us say this is your lateral geniculate bodies. Okay, so these two structures are called as your lateral geniculate body. You have got the lateral geniculate bodies. And next, what is this part over here? This part is called as a occipital cortex. Occipital cortex, and you see these fibers running down this occipital cortex, these are called as radiations. Okay, these are called as radiations, and these radiations are given a specific name, and these radiations are called as optic radiations. Where is your visual cortex located? Occipital cortex is the visual cortex responsible for the vision, right? Now, what is happening over here? What is happening over here is that you see from the lateral retina, the nerve fibers, they come down like this, they come down, and are they crossing or are they on the same side? They are on the same side like this. Okay, in the same way, the left also. From the left side of the retina also, the same things are happening like this. From the right side, from the right side. Now, when it comes to the medial retina, from the medial retina also the optic fibers, their optic nerves are coming down, but they are not being on the same side. They crossing in the sense dissociation, and then they go on to the opposite optic tract. Okay, see, from the right side they are going to the left optic tract. In the same way, from the left side they will go on to the right optic tract. Now tell me, are the red color fibers dissociating or the green color fibers are dissociating? The green color fibers are dissociating. Now if both red and green dissociate, I will call this as a complete dissociation. But here the red are on ipsilateral side, ipsilateral means on the same side, whereas the green ones only are dissociating. So that is why I call this dissociation as partial dissociation. And this point which you can see, this point where they are dissociating is what is called as your optic chiasma. This is called as your optic chiasma. So this is what is basically happening. Now what are the important points which you can see here? First important point, I have already told you that optic chiasma is not only the part of visual pathway, it is also forming the anterior part of the floor of the third ventricle. That is the first part. Second important part is that these optic nerves are not nerves, they are extensions of the white matter. So you have to write it down that these optic nerves are not actually nerves, rather they are the extensions of white matter of your forebrain. Obviously, where are your eyes located, in the occipital region or in the forebrain? Forebrain, but that center is located in the occipital region. The visual center is located in the occipital region, but your eyeballs, where the output comes, that is located where? Repeat. The visual center is located in the occipital region, but the eyeballs, where the signal input goes, is located in the frontal region. So white extensions of white matter of forebrain or prosencephalon, right? Forebrain. Now, second important thing is that these optic nerves are covered by meninges. Now tell me, normally are the neurons covered by meninges or myelin sheath? They are covered by myelin sheath. But here, these are not real nerves, right? So if these are real nerves, then they will be covered by myelin sheath. But here they are not covered by myelin sheath. They are covered by what? They are covered by meninges. They are covered by meninges. And third important thing is that they have space. If meninges are there, I have discussed about the meninges. There I discussed outer layer is called as dura mater, Middle layer is called arachnoid matter. Inner layer is called pia matter. Between the arachnoid and pia matter, the space is called as subarachnoid space. So here also, if they are having meninges, they will have subarachnoid space. Subarachnoid space. Okay. So these are some of the very important things which you need to know here, guys. So let us just quickly review what are the things we have discussed. So here what did we discuss is that first, this is the hypothalamus topic and this is the medial aspect picture of your cerebral cortex. And here I have drawn, this is called as your corpus callosum. It is having two parts. This red color one is called as a genu. The back is called as a splenium. Okay. In between that, this blue color line which I am drawing right now is called as a fornix. And this structure, whatever is here in between the green color boxes, this is called as a septum pellucidum. And I already told you septum pellucidum is attached only to the middle, right? So this is your septum pellucidum. Septum pellucidum, and this is your corpus callosum. Okay. Next important thing is that hanging down you have got what? Rostrum. Okay, just beneath the rostrum, this is called anterior commissure. When I tell anterior commissure, you even have got posterior commissure on the back. Next, you have got linea terminalis. Beneath the linea terminalis, you have got optic chiasma. Behind optic chiasma, you have got tuber cinereum. Behind that, you have got, what are these? Mammillary bodies. And connected to this tuber cinereum, you have got the neurohypophysis or posterior pituitary. And next, you have got anterior pituitary, which is also called as adenohypophysis. Mammillary body. Behind the mammillary body, this part over here is called as a posterior perforated substance. Behind that, this entire part is called as a midbrain, which is divided into two parts with the help of this, and which is not divided actually. Midbrain is not divided into two parts. Actually, midbrain has got a cavity. This is the correct way to tell. This cavity is called as cerebral aqueduct. Okay. And the part of the midbrain above this cerebral aqueduct, this is called as tegmentum of the midbrain. And the complete top position, see, this is thalamus. Below the thalamus, you have got this pink color structure. That is why you called as subthalamus. Sub in the sense below. That is why you call this as subthalamic tegment of the midbrain. Okay. Next, here you have got, this is called as a pituitary gland, not pituitary, this is called as a pineal stalk, pineal gland or epiphysis. And this is called as a pineal stalk. Pineal stalk has got two parts. One is called as the superior laminae, other one is called as the inferior laminae. Superior laminae goes anteriorly forward, posteriorly backward, and again anteriorly forward like this, right? And it has got a commissure called as habenular commissure. Down to the inferior laminae, you have got a commissure called as posterior commissure. Now between the two laminae, the superior and the inferior, here you have got a triangular area. This is called as pineal recess, right? Where the third ventricle undergoes extension. There is extension of the third ventricle into this. Next, above the pineal recess, you have got the suprapineal recess. Okay, so this is third ventricular diencephalon, and this third ventricular diencephalon is divided into two compartments with the help of a oblique sinus, and this oblique sinus is called as hypothalamic sulcus. Right, obliques, not sinus, oblique sulcus called as hypothalamic sulcus, which is dividing this third ventricular diencephalon into thalamus and hypothalamus. Now, if I ask you the structures that are forming the floor of the hypothalamus, what will you tell? Optic chiasm, tuber cinereum, infundibulum. Next, you have got your pituitary gland, mammillary bodies, and posterior perforated substance. If I ask you the structures that are forming the posterior part of the floor of the third ventricle, what will you tell? Subthalamic tegmentum of the midbrain. Okay. So these are some of the very important structures which you need to know regarding the hypothalamus, guys. So thank you so much for watching my video. Goodbye.